So thank you for inviting me to moderate this next panel. Amazing turnout. It's really good, especially for RSA. There's a lot of things going on. Great, you've drawn this audience to hear about the Basque environment. All right, so I've got a panel coming up. This is priority in industry, cybersecurity priority in industry. And I'd like to ask my panelists to come up. We're going to get started on this one right away. With us, we have Arantxa Tapia, the Minister of Economic Development and Infrastructure in the Basque government. Take your pick wherever you would like to go. Maybe here, since you're the guest of honor. Yeah. Okay. Lisa Carrington, Director of IT Planning and Governance at Arizona Public Service, a utility in the U.S. And Del Rodillas, ICS and OT Industries Product Marketing Director from Palo Alto Networks. So my first question, I'm going to go ahead and go over here. This makes it a little more personal. My first question is for the minister. Now, in the Basque country in Spain, it is an industrial center. It's an industrial center for Spain and a lot of Europe as well. How is the digital transformation, Industry 4.0, impacting that region? And how does cybersecurity fit into that?
Welcome, everybody, to this session. Welcome, and as Javier has told us, ongi etorri in Basque language. And okay, I'm going to try to explain you how the Basque country works. We are a very small region in the north of Spain, and we try to be very focused on our industry. And as you have told us, about 25% of our economy is industrial manufacturing industry. And we want to be there. For years and years, we have tried to have an industrial policy very focused on that. If we want to maintain competitive in Europe, being so small, we have to be at the front edge. So we have to be industrial, of course. We have to be very high-tech focusing. And when we started to talk about 4.0, the fourth industrial revolution in the early, I think it was 2013, we started to talk about that. Some of our companies started to say, okay, what's that minister talking about? Is this something that is really happening, or is this something that will pass? And nowadays, our companies are very involved in this kind of revolution, and now they are becoming very digital. And we have a big challenge trying to involve big industries and smaller ones. So we are focusing on describing whole value chains in different areas, in manufacturing, of course, in railways, aerospace, aeronautics, automotive sector, energy, and trying to involve every company, bigger ones and SMEs, which are very small in our area, and they have to be digital also. So working with the whole value chain, trying to be involved, to involve all these small companies with bigger ones, we are trying to work in the sense of digitalization. And 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we started to think that cybersecurity was something that was inside the digitalization. And our companies had to be aware of that and had to start working on that. So our center started from the industrial point of view again, not only for big infrastructures, for critical systems, but focusing on our industry, trying to develop new services, working with them very hard, and trying to be, again, at the front edge. So this is the way we are working now.
Fantastic. So it sounds like cybersecurity has been a key component to that digital transformation piece. And in reality, we know that digital transformation is going to happen one way or another, but adding that cybersecurity makes sure that it actually stays safe for your region as well. Thank you. Lisa, as an asset owner for a utility, you're actually one of the industrial components in the US, much like we have in the Basque Country and Spain. How is digital transformation affecting your organization as well? So basically in the same spot over here in the US, are we seeing something similar?
We're sharing a mic. I think what's interesting about digital transformation in the energy sector is the unintended consequence is that we had an identity crisis. We had no idea for the longest time that it really had anything to do with us. It certainly did on the fringe, but we fancy ourselves for 150 years as infrastructure businesses in energy. We deliver electricity via large poles and wires and power plants. And one day, slowly over time, we realized, oh my God, we have to be technology companies. So digital transformation has literally created an identity crisis, and energy itself has had to completely change our approach to absolutely everything that we do. In the future, we're technology companies that deliver goods and services. Some of those are electricity to our customers. So I think we went through a few years of just being purely in shock before we got our heads around, okay, this is our new reality. And now you can see the energy industry is actually fairly excited about it. And one of the good things, if there is a good thing about being as far behind as energy is when it comes to transformation and cybersecurity, is so much good work has already been done. So we're able now to invest in building secure architectures and actually building security at the beginning of this transformation, because we kind of have to start over. So it's an incredibly exciting opportunity. And while you're seeing us right now invest in a lot of foundational things that probably feel very basic to a very innovative country and around the world, that building up that strong foundation that was lacking in energy will enable us to do some incredible things as we put devices at the edge of our system, as we collect the data, as we bring that data back and recognize that our assets in the future are data versus poles and wires. And when our assets are data, that provides a new opportunity. You can look not very far down the road and see the opportunity for the democratization of electricity, where electricity becomes inexpensive and accessible to everyone because energy companies have a new way to make money. In essence, they could be selling the data instead of the electricity. So while that's not a reality today, you can certainly see that the foundation for the work that we're doing now could get us there.
Dell, you make the products and services that we use in the industrial space. Many industries, many companies, many countries, we're all talking about supply chain. You are the source of some of these things for our world. Talk to us about what you're doing to make this supply chain heartburn, this pain for us a little bit easier.
Yeah, so I wasn't always on the product side. I used to be an engineer in the semiconductor industry. So I've seen OT from that standpoint, uptime, safety, or the priorities. And coming at it from a supplier standpoint, we used to beat up our suppliers in terms of giving us the information we need. So I would say in this position I'm at, where we are being asked by our customers what we do, the recommendation I would give is to press for transparency. A supplier that can answer the questions that you have in terms of, hey, how are you managing your code development? Who are your suppliers, right? Are you encrypting your information? Are you allowing code to be installed on your software? These are things that you should ask and have a very concerted effort to develop these questions. So if your supplier is not transparent about that, that raises a red flag, right? Certainly you want to make sure not only that they're answering the questions, but to your satisfaction. So it's very important you spend the time to develop the right kind of questions for these surveys and run it across the different suppliers, right? And the second aspect is they, despite their best practices, could still be compromised, right? Or you may be giving some of them access to your environment and they may not have the best access policy. So you have to implement some kind of zero trust policy. Just because this vendor has implemented best practice, that doesn't mean that when they're finally deployed in your OT environment that bad things can't happen to them still. So have the kind of architectures that allows you to inspect them, have that strong authentication, even though they're that trusted vendor, still put that in place and make sure you have these second lines of defense to protect yourself.
So the follow-on question, how would they get those questions answered? Is there like a front door for asking?
Yeah. For example, at Palo Alto Networks, we do have a formal process where we have kind of a compliance organization in our company where the questions come to them and they have this formal response and they go back and forth till they're satisfied with their responses. For example, some of our customers in the utility space, they're subject to the NERC-CIP regulations in the United States. Very specific information on their standards versus, are you allowing certain software to be installed on your hardware? The answer is no in our case, but all these details are going to be answered. Hopefully there's something in that organization that's more formal and standardized and timely, right?
Right. Okay, I'm going to turn this back to you as a utility, an actual industrial asset owner. This supply chain stuff. Of course, the NERC SIP standard, you are in the electric sector, we understand that piece. But just in general, from a supply chain perspective, is there this general sense of you can or can't buy products from certain places, or you must buy them from some places, or with certain explicit statements about what they do in terms of life cycles, software life cycle, that kind of thing?
It's still a very immature space for all of us. I think we were having conversations last night about we buy products now on a belief system because there's not a certification for those products. Outside the U.S., you may choose to not buy Cisco equipment because you felt that might not be secure. Inside the U.S., people don't like to buy Kaspersky because they've done other things. But we have, despite transparency, we have sort of an antiquated belief system in how we're securing our supply chain, which is a terrible way to do anything. Yes. So I think we, as part of the utility industry, certainly we do have regulations, which I think in the United States, at least, we found an introduction of regulations is a great way to start a conversation. It does not get us where we need to go, but I think you're pushing people to have these conversations that say, one company coming to Palo Alto and asking a question doesn't make any difference. But a group of us coming together, especially an international community, coming together to say we need secure products and services, and we need those in ways that we can work with, that we can access, and that we can afford, I think has a very, very different connotation for vendors because they begin to listen.
So, yeah, thank you. I understand it is pretty much like a belief system, and we're seeing something that approaches almost like the balkanization of not only the internet space, but of the product space. And maybe this is something the Basque Center can solve for us, is something like an international transparency zone. We need like an international Hague, criminal court, just to make sure that you can all go to one spot and get your products vetted. That would be something that would be interesting to see. But
yeah, I think something we'd all be very interested in too, especially with that inherent neutrality.
Yeah, well, we all buy our products internationally. That's Absolutely. None of us, we all buy the same products from the same people all around the world. It's very interesting to hear. Okay, now for the minister, for the region in Spain, all of these things, you've got a kind of a global nexus happening in your region. How is all of this impacting your ability to do things in your region and have that become kind of an epicenter for all the greatness to share with the rest of the world, things like we were just talking about today?
Okay, I will try to explain how we work and maybe something different, but it's the way we do things. And with this cybersecurity center and with the work we do with all the supply chains and trying to work together, I will give you one example of how we work with supply chains, for instance. Iberdrola, the big utility. Here is a bank, I think, in the USA. And they try to develop all the companies, the small companies that work for them, trying to have a big amount of companies that are suppliers, working all together with new standards, new, regulation, new components, new softwares. So they try to develop projects, and we as a government try to help them. And once they have developed everything, they put it into work in the Spanish area, but at the same time, they go abroad. They come to the US, they go to Scotland, to the UK, because they are present there. They come to Brazil. So they go with all the supply chain, and nowadays, of course, they work with the cybersecurity companies all together. We are not able to work alone, because we are so small. But we try to work in both senses, trying to put our companies at the best place, very competitive place, but at the same time work with other hubs, cybersecurity hubs, energy hubs, to work together and to fill all the gaps we have as a small country. So it makes us work in a better way. But that's the way we try to work, because we have to be there, being only 2.2 million people, as you have seen in the video.
Right. Fantastic. So there's an example of the Basque region impacting the rest of the world through those standards that, for example, using through Iberdrola. Oh, that's fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah.
We try to work in the best way, in the sense, and sometimes when we try to explain our system, the way we work, they say, how does the government work with companies? And there has been a history of years and years working private and public sector together. So we are not interventionists on private companies, but we help them to be more competitive. So in this sense, when a private company has a complete project that wants to be developed in a, I don't know, in a very innovative manner, and they have the supply chain or whatever, they had the idea, they come to the government in a sense that, how can you work with us? How can you help us to make this happen in the best way and in the quickest way? So that's the way we work, and when we don't have enough innovation, enough companies, we try to find them in other places, of course. And that's the way the Cybersecurity Center is working nowadays, and this is because we are here, and you know Javier, he's coping all the world, and having the best companies and the best practices in the Basque Country.
Fantastic. We've got situations now where, as Lisa mentioned, we've got the utilities, a lot of industries, no matter whether it's an electric utility or not, they're digitizing their world, and you've seen this in your region as well. The architecture we're working with right now is a lot of analog endpoints. As we make all those digital, we've got to find a way to get that data back to the mothership where it's processed to make it useful. And currently, the networks we have now can't support that. We've designed our architectures around the industrial side because of the way the products that are basically designed for us. How is your organization changing what it's doing to help us with these industrial architectures to make the digital transformations more possible?
I mean, from my observations, I think you're referring to things like industrial IoT, where you have these plethora of devices trying to connect up to a gateway and then up to the cloud. So a lot of the reactions from our customers initially is that we're going to address this by patching all of these devices, and we're going to make this massive patch management. That's completely the wrong approach. I think you need to think about the methodology for approaching this security, which in this case, network security is probably where you're going to get the most leverage. So I would start there. I would think about where's the ideal place to put the gateway, maybe right after the IoT gateway, or it's creating VLANs to kind of segment the network. But that strategic architecture is very key for your approach here. And while segmentation is an important step, prior to that, you need to discover what are these devices and make decisions. Hey, why does my HVAC system need to talk to my Siemens distributed control system? Why does the Siemens need to talk to Honeywell? They probably don't. But in many of these environments, you can get from a surveillance server to a DCS server with no problem. So I would say visibility at the device level, and think about how these systems need to interact or not interact. Create this segmentation. And you also need to think about beyond the on-prem. Chances are these industrial IoT devices need to connect up to the cloud. We have these customers today that are connecting oil rigs up to Azure IoT. So that presents a new problem. How do you secure the cloud, right? So how are you protecting that north-south traffic in these public clouds, which is going to be essential part of your IIoT architecture? And how are you making sure these environments can't be compromised? I think you need to consider that as part of your industrial IoT security strategy.
Thank you. From an architecture perspective, yes, that makes sense. And I'm still wondering, and maybe we've got plenty of options in the future that some smart people in the room can think of. If I've got to connect 5 million endpoints through a single pipe to talk to something else, with everything from data exchange, key exchange for encryption, this is a new challenge that I think we're hoping that can be solved. And I'm glad you're here. Maybe you can take this back to the awesome people you've got in your region to help us solve this problem. Yeah.
I think you were talking about our language.
Yes, the cryptography, cryptology, the Basque secret language.
It was a joke, but anyway, I don't know if we have a special manner to do that or a technology, but we are sure that our companies will be there.
Yes.
Trying to work with the best ones and finding a solution, not only for our country, but as a whole solution. We don't think we have only a solution, and that we are compared to this area, of course, we are now in a second position. We are not leader in this way, but we hope that we will be able to be not leader, but a good second one to work with a leader. That's a more realistic way to do things in our region,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, your region is definitely enabling a lot of great things.
Yes.
Okay.
That's
Fantastic. Well, that's the conclusion of my panel, and I'm checking to make sure we are right on time. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.